There is a silent creep within the scope and scale of YouTube videos, and it isn't felt by the YouTuber nor their audience until they're reminded of how things used to be. Every year, 3kliksphilip receives more criticism for being lazy, low effort, and for AI generating his content. And while it is just a background hum to me, it does end up making me question whether there's some truth to some of that. Not the AI bit, that's ridiculous. But it was really interesting when I found an unreleased video, first made in 2017, which I released at the end of 2023. And sure enough, it was met to unprecedented criticism for being low effort, low quality, and AI generated. But it's validating for me to confirm that the expectations of my audience have changed, as this helps me to deal with the ever-increasing amount of negative feedback I get from creating Counter-Strike content on my Counter-Strike channel. It's just a fact of life that a game like Counter-Strike, and indeed a YouTuber covering it, goes through a golden period where everything is good, and then their audience gradually moves on. Most do this quietly and without complaint, but some don't do so peacefully, and have to justify their transition away from the content by relentlessly putting down the Counter-Strike content that they're moving on from. In terms of workflow, I used to always make videos in a single day, and dreamed of a day when I could work on larger, more comprehensive videos that span several days or even weeks. This has now become my reality. But when the result only gets the same number of views as the one-day projects used to, my new dream is to return to smaller videos again, where I can get it all out in a single day. I don't artificially increase the length of my content, unless it happens to just reach the 8-minute mark, in which case I like to extend it by another 30 seconds or so, just to avoid the horrible comments accusing me of artificially extending the video to reach the 8-minute ad revenue cutoff that YouTube currently operates. Some people still think the cutoff is 10 minutes, so it's amusing when a video that surpasses the ad cutoff by 2 minutes is still criticised for being a cash grab, based on the length of the video alone. Things certainly have changed online. Since about the year 2020, I wonder why, I feel like people's attention spans have changed. People seem to love short videos, and the longer videos of mine have more often than not flopped. Whereas before 2020, if I invested the time and effort into a 15-minute long epic, I was almost guaranteed to be rewarded with more views and likes as a result. But these days it makes more sense to divide a 15-minute video up into 3 much more accessible 5-minute length ones, and then to watch as all 3 of them get more views than I expected that single 15-minute video to ever get. Though there's never a way of proving this definitively one way or the other. The other kind of video that seems to do well on YouTube these days is the ultra long videos, because maybe podcasts and other multi-hour long videos have an average audience retention figure far greater than the lengths of any of my videos, thus appearing superior to YouTube's algorithms. These days, what with content being divided between ultra short and ultra long videos, 3kliksphilip's content seems to fall down that gap in between. But recently I had the chance to make a bigger video again, and felt it was time to test the waters and to see if maybe things had changed. So in Counter-Strike, the map of Ancient got an update, and I had covered the Shoots update already and didn't want to bore my audience with more of the same, since Ancient updates were based on the same textures and assets as Shoots had already received. But at the same time, I didn't want to neglect such a large map update, so I instead made that coverage of Ancient into a much more all-encompassing video, dating back to the beta of the original Counter-Strike. 2 weeks was enough time to go deep down the rabbit hole of beta versions of the map, and I would soon realise just how much cool trivia there was to research and to cram into this video. Often, in a bid to keep segments self-contained, I found myself repeating the same information several times, like how I mentioned the water's reflections, or how textures blend between different materials, or whatever. A longer video doesn't just take longer to make and to watch, it requires many more revisions before its structure can set into something that's tight, coherent, and actually worth watching. And this isn't something you can just do by planning more beforehand. It involves getting stuck in, discovering stuff, going on tangents, getting messy, and then trying to clear it all up again afterwards. And it's always scary to commit to such an unknown entity. Overall, it seems like people are quite content with the result. And ironically, I've used AI in this video far more than in previous ones. I didn't let it dictate changes to me, but if, like mine, your script is over 10 minutes in length and you've just spent 7 hours that day already going through it again and again and again, you do begin to grow blind to its issues, and I liked copy and pasting that script into AI and asking it to judge the script, and it would come back to me with a bunch of solid suggestions. The way I use this AI feedback is to take it on board, to pause and to consider its points, but most of the time I ignore them because I've done things the way I've done it intentionally, but it is always good for spotting typos, any repeated segments or phrases, and when I am so focused on tiny details so much, it's good to be reminded about the bigger picture again. So like I said, its feedback was pretty good. It also seemed to do a good job of proof checking some of my claims. I mean, it got some wrong, but that's only because I've researched the topic more than the resources online can provide. But this was still valuable to me. It acted as like a devil's advocate. preparing me for the sorts of claims that commenters on the video might make based on their limited knowledge of what's available online. I'm certainly not going to be tricked by the AI lying to me, but if it questions a statement I've done, then it's a great way for me to focus my future research and to avoid making silly errors. As an example, if I'm covering something really in depth in a video, more often than not I'll get all the complex technicalities correct, but it's often something silly like me attributing the wrong mapper to the map, like calling Chris Orty Chris Ashton or Chris Mayer by mistake, because in my head I don't stop to consider that there could be several iconic 1.6 mappers with the same name. I didn't make this mistake with this video, but that's the sort of thing I could overlook if I don't get somebody else to review it. Incredibly, even though I give more time to this kind of project, a lot of potential content for it gets the chop. I didn't bother covering all of the minor changes between the first and last version in the original Counter-Strike, for instance, as I feared that would overstay its welcome in contrast to the much greater and more interesting changes in later Counter-Strike versions. Don't get me wrong, I'd investigate it and see that 1.4 would have some cool unique changes, and boom! 3 more minutes added to the viewing length of the video of me just talking about this very specific thing. But I have to weigh that up against the interest that 99% of my audience would have for that topic, and so opted against that. Another thing that was cut was the soundscapes. I spend this whole video fixating on how the graphics and gameplay have changed, yet I barely touch upon the audio at all. And this is because there's a lot of research required into that topic alone. I need to brush up on how Source 2 does soundscapes and research how it's changed over CSGO's lifetime and whether that would affect the beta versus the 2017 build and whether the workshop versions would contain custom soundscapes and so on. There's just a lot more potential for making mistakes if I cover something in passing without investigating the topic as a whole in detail first. And what about the water reflections in Aztec? I could have sworn that the Counter-Strike Source version of the map had good reflections long after the beta of it came out, but I went through countless early YouTube videos and skill videos, and from those I couldn't find a single one recorded after the beta that featured those reflections. Yet I've got a few comments already saying that Aztec did still have those cool reflections for a while after, and I have no idea if they're true or just as confused as I was. I couldn't find proof of it, so I tried just not to focus on when the water got downgraded reflections, since it seems like it's impossible to know from what limited records we have online. But that was a few hours of my own time down the drain right there, and nothing within the video itself would suggest so much of my time went into that one tiny aspect of the video. It's crazy how a sprawling video such as this one omits more details than a shorter and more focused video would do. If I wanted to do this video perfectly, I'd end up working on it forever, for an endless video that would bore everybody to death. There is a balance to be struck, and while a lot more people are complaining that I forgot the pre-1.6 versions of Counter-Strike, to me it's the lack of sound coverage that's the major shame, and what I thought was the most obvious omission with this video. But I justified it to myself by saying that I'd investigate it in more depth at a later date and make a whole video about that one particular topic. It's been years since I've made a video of this magnitude, a half-hour epic containing a number of self-contained segments. Believe me, the temptation was there to divide it all up and to release it as several shorter videos, but like I said, this video also doubled up as an experiment to see how a bigger video would perform. I really think this is the best video I've made in a very long time, combining the best of my olden day content with the humour and quality of my latest stuff. But so far it's flopped. Kind of as expected. Like I said, I should have split it into like 6 5-minute videos instead to spread the risk. But it does serve as an experiment into YouTubing in 2025. Like I said, I've wanted to make longer videos for a while, and this is the best chance I've had to do so, given how much subject matter there is to cover. And I really do hope that this video over time will grow in popularity, as I know the quality is there, and I suspect its long view time and audience retention will help the algorithm to quietly push it for many years to come when compared with my shorter videos. Though right now the analytics are saying it's not being viewed as much because YouTube isn't recommending it as much as normal, to which I'm like, well, recommend it more, bitch! It's not up to me to decide what YouTube recommends and to whom and when and how and what. A few new tricks have come out recently to help a YouTuber to optimize their content. One of these is to trial 3 different thumbnails, which gives me 3 chances to score a successful one. More often than not, there's only like a single percentage point between them all, but every little helps, I suppose. That could be the difference between a video catching on and not. I've recently gone further again by this, by seeing which of these 3 thumbnails is most successful, and then I create 3 variations on that, with different brightness and contrast. But again, there doesn't seem to be too much variety between that most of the time. But this is one aspect of the video that has suddenly grown to a lot more effort than it used to be, since now I have to make 6 thumbnails, whereas previously I only made 1. And I get a bunch of criticism from people telling me to stop changing the thumbnail when it's probably just YouTube showing them different ones every time they view it. With longer videos, such as this Aztec Ancient one, I like to create them as a bunch of self-contained mini stories. and have started considering that when making them in the first place for when I later make them into short videos. This helps when I divide the video up into chapters too, since a lot of people will be clicking straight to a certain point of the video that they have interest in, and I want to make sure that they don't feel lost or confused by doing so. But this self-contained approach also enables short videos to be extracted from the main one more easily. I have managed to make 14 short videos from this single half-hour long video. These are another aspect of YouTubing that has gone from not existing to now being quite a time-intensive part of the video making process for me. There are a lot of services that automate this for you or will take that off your hands, but I feel like once you give the editing of your videos to somebody else, you lose control of your own content and it stops being yours. So I've not done that yet. But it does mean that for this video, I needed to polish up 14 different short videos to a respectable quality. To up the music volume for a phone viewing audience, to edit the narration, and to add new bits to keep them better self-contained, and it can often take a day or so simply to do this, and then to upload and to schedule them to YouTube Shorts and to TikTok and so on. I also have an Instagram, but for some reason I've gravitated towards only publishing content on that would interest people who know me as a person, so Ancient Shorts probably won't make it to that platform. Instagram is kind of like the kliksphilip channel of the short empire. Maybe I should start uploading my Instagram shorts to this YouTube channel. Ooh. It's validating to know that I can still make a super long and in-depth video, even if it does fail in view count. It gives me a defense. If people complain that I don't make stuff like I used to, I can point to this video as proof that I do and that they just didn't watch it. It's also reassuring for me to know that I haven't peaked. 2 kliksphilip's best video is still the Odd Grub one from 2019. It took me 6 months to make. I don't really want to do that again. Everybody has dreams of completing a mega project such as this one, but nobody really considers what happens afterwards. As it is, I feel like my old self has become my own worst enemy, and is what I and others now benchmark myself against, even if it's unfair to do so because I don't really want to try and top that video. It took too long and it just wouldn't pay off in this current climate. But 3 kliksphilip has been needing a good long video for a while, and this has been a great excuse to do just that. And I'm sure that some of the short videos I've made from it will take off on at least one of the social media sites that I've posted them to. The making of this longer video has left me confused. I've never known what 2 kliksphilip does, but I've always had a pretty good idea of what 3 kliksphilip is. He does Counter-Strike content, and every bit of content is only as long as it needs to be. I will probably just keep doing that. But part of me loves the idea of him becoming a channel that produces fewer but longer and much more in-depth videos investigating things the way this video has. Some channels have become very successful with that approach, where every upload of theirs is viewed by a large percentage of their viewer base. And I do prefer the workflow of bigger and more interesting videos over regular, smaller and more hastily made content, which is a bit more frantic and stressful. But if measured in terms of every conventional metric that YouTube and its algorithm goes by, this longer video has not been worth it. So do I follow my dreams and stubbornly double down and only make this longer kind of content in the hope that my audience eventually grows to like and to click on this content more consistently? Or do I just continue to only release longer videos like this one infrequently and to mixed success? Or should I take this as a sign that I was right in believing that in terms of YouTubing success, that super long, in-depth content like this is not sensible to invest so much of my time into making, at least for now, and within the Counter-Strike space? What do you think?